She was already laughing when I walked in. Not the polite kind. Not the corporate, I have to network kind. It was the laugh she used to save just for me. The one that made her toss her head back a little too far, like gravity itself didn't matter anymore. She had no idea I was watching her. Not yet. The party was loud. The music was too polished, the lighting too warm, like it was trying to hide the cracks in everyone's perfect little faces. But I wasn't there for the ambience. I wasn't even supposed to be there at all. She thought I was at home. Sick. Sleeping. Clueless. But I'd seen the text. The one she deleted. She didn't know I had her backup messages linked to my old tablet. She'd forgotten. I hadn't. So I rented a suit. I lied to my boss. And I showed up at her company's summer gala like a ghost, just to see. And I saw. God, I saw. She was standing near the fountain under those stupid string lights, leaning in close to someone. Someone tall, someone magnetic, someone intentional with every move. A woman. Blonde. All legs and smirks and effortless confidence. The kind of woman who looks like she wakes up glowing. They were standing too close. Too familiar. And my wife, was looking at her like she was a wish come true. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, tucked behind some plastic ivy arch, watching the woman I made soup for last night twirl her hair and bite her lip for someone else. She didn't even know I was there. Not until the blonde turned slightly, whispered something in her ear, and Melanie's eyes went wide. Frozen, like someone had poured ice water down her back. And that's when it happened. That's when she saw me. And everything collapsed. She didn't move. Not for a solid 3 seconds. Which doesn't sound like much, but in a moment like that, when your whole carefully constructed fantasy bursts like a cheap wine balloon, 3 seconds is forever. She just stood there, frozen mid-laugh, wine glass halfway to her mouth. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And the blonde? She didn't even notice the shift at first. She kept talking, something animated, flirtatious. Her fingers lightly grazing Melanie's wrist like they'd done it 100 times before. But I saw the tremble. My wife's fingers shook just enough to make the wine ripple in the glass. She lowered it slowly, as if pretending nothing had happened might reverse time. She didn't look at the woman again. Her eyes locked on mine, across the fake ivy arch, the fairy lights, the buzzing crowd that had no idea the floor just dropped out from under her. I didn't blink. I wanted her to see me. Really see me. I wasn't going to turn away this time. I wasn't going to retreat and convince myself I'd misread everything like I had with the late nights, the silent dinners, the "I'm just tired" lies. Not this time. The blonde finally noticed. She followed Melanie's gaze, then turned to look over her shoulder at me. Her expression didn't falter, but something in her eyes registered. Recognition. Not shock, not guilt. Something else. Like a test she had just passed. Or failed. Melanie stepped back. Just one step. But it was the way she did it. Mechanical, like she wasn't sure her legs would obey. Her free hand went to her necklace, that little silver infinity loop I gave her on our 2nd anniversary. The one she hadn't worn in months. She was wearing it tonight. Was it for me? Or for her? People started turning. Just a few. A couple co-workers glancing toward the sudden quiet bubble that had formed around us. The music kept playing, the bartenders kept pouring. But inside that circle, her, me, and the blonde, something had ruptured. She opened her mouth. I saw the beginning of an apology in her eyes. Or maybe it was denial or panic. But she never got a word out. Because I turned and walked out. No yelling. No confrontation. Just silence. But it wasn't over. Not even close. As I pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the parking lot's humid darkness, my phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Then 6 times in a row. I didn't check the screen until I sat behind the wheel of my car, still parked under a flickering lamp at the far edge of the lot. And when I did, I didn't see her name. I saw hers. The blonde. And what she sent me. It made me nauseous. Because it wasn't the first time she had contacted me. And it wouldn't be the last. There were 7 messages. All from the same unsaved number. But I knew exactly who it was. You don't forget a face like hers. Or a voice. Or the way she tilted her head while circling the rim of her glass with one finger, like she was always waiting for someone to beg. The first text was short. Just a single sentence. She wasn't supposed to see you. I stared at it, heart pounding against my ribs. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. This wasn't some spontaneous mistake. This was something planned, coordinated, hidden. Carefully, deliberately, kept from me. The second message was worse. I told her you'd be too afraid to show up. I blinked. It felt like someone had just whispered in my ear from behind me, but the car was empty. Just me and the glow of the dashboard light, and the muffled music bleeding out from the hotel. Third message. You surprised us both. And then the photos started. Not explicit, but intimate. A series of them. A drink on a rooftop bar. My wife's hand across the table, the green polish on her nails unmistakable. A close-up of 2 wine glasses clinking, her reflection visible in the glass. A blurred shot of Melanie walking down a hotel hallway, her back turned, but her figure unmistakable. The same green dress. The same night. Not the night of the party. Another night. Earlier. My fingers went numb. I scrolled back up. Read the first message again. Then again. As if the words would rearrange themselves into something more harmless. They didn't. The fifth message dropped like a guillotine. She always said you'd never leave. That you'd just sulk and swallow it. And here I was. Sitting in my car. In the parking lot. Sulking. Swallowing it. Like she said I would. I nearly threw the phone out the window. Nearly screamed. But something in me shut down instead. Like a circuit breaker flipping during a storm. I just stared through the windshield as a couple in cocktail attire walked past, laughing, completely oblivious to the implosion unraveling behind my eyes. The sixth message came a few minutes later. But now that she knows, maybe it's my turn. My chest tightened. I read it twice, then 3 more times. What the hell did that mean? And the final message? A location pin. Downtown. 20 minutes from where I sat. A bar I didn't recognize. Sent with no caption. No emoji. Just that tiny red marker glowing against a map of the city like a bloodstain. I didn't move. I didn't know whether I was being invited to some sort of explanation or ambush. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This felt layered. Controlled. Like I'd been cast in a play I didn't even know I was auditioning for. And worst of all, some part of me still wanted to go. Not for answers. Not even for revenge. But because I needed to know who my wife really was. When I wasn't looking. And I had a feeling that whatever I'd find at that pin on the map would bury the version of her I'd been clinging to for years. Forever. I told myself I wasn't going. I even started the car and pulled halfway out of the space before slamming it back into park, so hard the gear stick groaned. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel, like I could squeeze the confusion out of my own hands if I held tight enough. I wasn't the type of man who chased shadows across the city. I wasn't the kind of person who followed cryptic texts from women who whispered poison through pixelated screens. And I definitely wasn't the kind of husband who needed to see more proof. I already had enough, right? But 20 minutes later, I was staring at the glowing red neon sign that said Wilds. A quiet bar tucked between a boarded-up tailor shop and a vape store still pretending it was 2014. I'd never been here before, and yet, it didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt placed. Like a scene built for me in advance. Inside, it was dim and narrow, almost theatrical. Not the kind of place people stumbled into. Every drinker at the bar looked like they'd been there since the building was built, or like they were being paid to sit still. I stepped in, and before I could fully adjust to the darkness, a woman behind the counter, early 30s, tight ponytail, no-nonsense eyes, nodded and said, "She's in the back." Just like that. No name. No explanation. No ID check. She's in the back. Like I was expected. Like I'd been booked. I should have left right then. I knew that. But I walked. Slowly. Every step echoing louder than it should have on the floorboards. The hallway past the bar opened into a private room. Velvet curtains. A small table. 2 empty chairs. And 1 half-finished drink with a lipstick stain so sharp it looked drawn on. But no one was there. Just that unfinished drink. And a single folded napkin on the table with my name, my actual name, handwritten in cursive I didn't recognize. Not Colby. My full name. First, middle, and last. Something I hadn't seen written out in over a decade. I picked it up with shaking fingers, unfolded it, expecting. I don't know, another location? A warning? A taunt? But instead, it just said, "Ask her about Charlotte." That was it. No signature. No hint. Just that name. And the second I read it, I swear my heart stopped. Because Charlotte wasn't a name my wife ever said out loud. We'd never talked about her. Not once. Not in 6 years. Not even during the fights. Not even when we screamed things we regretted later. Charlotte had been locked away in a part of me I swore I'd never open again. A chapter so buried that I could pretend it never happened. But someone knew. Someone wanted me to know they knew. And someone, either Melanie or this woman, or both, had torn open a sealed box I thought I'd thrown into the ocean of time. Suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about a kiss, or a laugh, or a pair of wine glasses clinking in the dark. This was about the past. My past. Our past. Something buried. Something poisonous. Something that maybe had never really ended. And as I stood there, shaking in that empty room, I finally realized I was no longer the one following breadcrumbs. I was already inside the trap, and someone had just locked the door. There are names that carry weight, even if you haven't said them in years. Charlotte wasn't just a name, she was a scar. A silent, aching, deep tissue wound that never fully healed because we never let it. Not out loud. Not to each other. Melanie and I had an unspoken rule in our marriage. Pretend the past doesn't exist, and maybe it won't find us. We were wrong. As I stood in that dim, velvet-draped room with the napkin still in my hand, I could hear the blood rushing through my ears louder than the hum of the bar outside. I sat down at the table without realizing I'd moved. The half-finished drink stared back at me like a dare. Charlotte. I hadn't heard that name since the hospital. Back then, Melanie was still calling me babe and tracing circles on my wrist when she thought I was asleep. Back then, we were still planning baby names, arguing about car seats, and painting walls in that ugly pastel green that everyone on Pinterest swore was calming. And then came 21 weeks. Then came the silence in the ultrasound room. Then came the nurse's face. Then came Charlotte. Still, quiet, never crying, never breathing. We didn't have a funeral. We didn't tell our families. We didn't do anything but sit in the car outside that hospital in the rain for 2 hours, both of us staring at the dashboard, waiting for the other to break first. Neither of us did. We just drove home, ate cereal, slept in separate rooms for a week, and then pretended she was never real. Charlotte. God, who would even know about her? Who would know the name? It wasn't in any file. It wasn't posted online. We'd chosen it in whispers, late one night, before the world fell apart. We swore not to tell anyone. And we didn't. At least, I didn't. I gripped the edges of the table. My knuckles cracked. If this woman, this tall, smiling blonde at the party, if she knew about Charlotte, that meant one of two things. Either Melanie had told her, or she had been around back then. And if she had been around back then I had forgotten something. Or someone. Or, and this made my stomach twist, maybe I hadn't forgotten at all. Maybe I had buried a memory right alongside Charlotte and convinced myself it was grief. My phone buzzed again. No number. No name. Just a single message. Did she ever tell you I was in the room? I stared at it for what felt like years. The room? What room? There were a dozen possible meanings, but my brain, traitorous, eager, terrified, went straight to the one room I had fought not to think about for 6 years. The delivery room. That ice-cold, too bright, too quiet place where I had sat beside Melanie as they told us there was no heartbeat. Where I held her hand while she stared at the ceiling and refused to blink. Where I whispered Charlotte's name into her fingers, and she didn't say it back. No one else was there. Just us. Us and the nurse. And maybe. No, I would have remembered. Right? The phone buzzed again. A photo this time. Grainy. Old. Blurry. A hallway. A hospital door. Room 314. I hadn't seen that number in years. But I remembered it now. Clear as day. And just behind the door frame, barely visible, barely lit. A shadow. A figure. Watching. Not a nurse. Not a doctor. Someone else. Someone who had no reason to be there. My throat tightened. I wanted to throw up. Or scream. Or smash the phone into the floor. But instead I just sat there, cold sweat sticking my shirt to my back, heart cracking open like an overripe fruit. Whatever this was, whoever she was, she hadn't just stepped into our lives last week. She had been there from the beginning. And now she wanted me to remember why. I didn't go home that night. I didn't go anywhere, really. I just drove. Around the city. Past closed diners and flickering streetlights. Through intersections I barely registered. My phone sat on the passenger seat like it was radioactive, its screen dark but heavy with everything I had just seen. I wanted to throw it into the river, leave it buzzing beneath the water, let the current carry all of this away. But I couldn't, because something had cracked open inside me. Something I'd spent 6 years cementing over with routine and politeness and pretending. And now it was oozing out. Sticky, confusing, dangerous. Charlotte. Room 314. The shadow in the doorway. The texts. The photos. The napkin. The woman with the eyes like knives and the smirk like she already knew my next 10 thoughts. And worst of all, Melanie's face when she saw me. That mix of horror, guilt, recognition. Like she knew this day would come, and she had just hoped I wouldn't be brave enough to make it real. By sunrise, I was parked outside our house. I didn't have a key anymore, not after I lost mine 3 weeks ago and never bothered to ask for a replacement. So I knocked. Twice. The porch light flicked on. Then her silhouette filled the doorway. No makeup. Hair messy. One of my old college hoodies drowning her small frame. She looked nothing like the woman from the party. And yet, exactly like her. She didn't speak. Neither did I. She just stepped aside. And I walked in. The house smelled like lavender and microwaved oatmeal. Same way it always did. Like nothing had happened. Like none of this had happened. Like we were still just a boring couple who argued about grocery lists and split laundry days like it meant something. I sat on the edge of the couch. She sat across from me, on the ottoman, elbows on her knees. Still silent. It felt like a negotiation between two hostages. Finally, I said it. The name. Charlotte. She flinched. Not much, but enough. I watched her mouth tighten, her fingers linked together like she was bracing for an impact that had been hovering for years. Why didn't you ever talk about her? I asked. She looked away. I couldn't or wouldn't. Does it matter? She whispered. It did. It mattered more than anything. But before I could push, she looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time since all this started, her expression wasn't defensive or angry or ashamed. It was terrified. You're not safe, Colby. The words didn't register at first. Not the way they should have. Not with the weight they carried. I frowned. What? She leaned forward, voice trembling. You think this is about me cheating on you? About some flirty conversation at a party? She shook her head. It's bigger than that. It's always been bigger than that. I tried to keep it from you. I had to. Because once you see her, really see her, she doesn't let go. I felt my pulse rising. She? I asked slowly. You mean the blonde? The one at the party? Melanie's eyes darted toward the hallway, toward the bedroom. I don't know her name, she said. She never gave it to me. But she's been around for a long time. Since before we lost Charlotte. She showed up after. At the grief group. At the coffee shop. Sometimes I'd see her in the corner of my eye at the gas station. Just watching. Always watching. My mouth went dry. She said things I didn't tell anyone. Things she shouldn't have known. I couldn't breathe. And when I finally talked to her, when I let her in, Melanie swallowed hard. Things got worse. The nightmares. The memory gaps. The missing things. She stood up suddenly, rushed down the hallway, and I followed, dizzy with confusion. She flung open the closet door in our bedroom and began pulling down boxes from the top shelf. One after another. Cardboard, labeled, sealed, but when she opened them, they were empty. All of them. 5 boxes labeled Charlotte. Baby clothes. Photos. Ultrasound prints. All gone. Like they'd never existed. I packed them myself, she said, tears now falling. I packed them. I held the onesie in my hands. I taped the boxes shut. I labeled them. They were here. For years. I touched one of the boxes. Still warm. Still real. Still empty. You think I'm crazy, she whispered. I didn't answer. Because part of me did. And part of me didn't. And the last part? The last part was remembering the woman at the party. How she looked at me. Not like a stranger. But like someone I'd already met. And forgotten. After Melanie collapsed into bed from exhaustion, or terror, or both, I wandered the house like a ghost. Every room looked like a replica of our life instead of the real thing. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at a framed photo from a vacation we took 5 years ago in Monterey. She was in the picture. I was in the picture. But Charlotte wasn't. Because, of course, she wasn't born. And yet, something about the photo gnawed at me. It had always sat there, next to the thermostat, beneath the hallway sconce. A safe, ordinary snapshot of a happy couple. But now, as I looked closer, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A woman, in the background, half cropped by the edge of the frame, blurred but unmistakable, blonde, tall, face tilted toward the camera at an odd angle, as if she knew she was being captured. She wasn't part of the crowd. She wasn't walking past. She was just standing there, looking at us, right at us. The hairs on my arms stood up. I took the frame off the wall, brought it into the kitchen, and scanned it under the hanging pendant light. Zooming in with my phone camera only made it worse. Her expression was almost playful, a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. And the strangest part? She was holding something. A folded piece of paper. No, not paper. A napkin. A white napkin. I put the frame down like it had burned me. Same woman. Same napkin. 5 years ago. No way to explain it. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I stayed in the kitchen with every light on, scrolling through every single digital photo from the last decade. Anniversary dinners. Friends' weddings. That ski trip I hated. A boring company mixer in 19. Dozens of photos. Hundreds. And she was in 4 more of them. Always in the background. Always just a blur. Never front and center, but always there. Close enough to spot if you were looking. Far enough to miss if you weren't. Who was she? Why was she everywhere? And why the hell hadn't I ever noticed? Just after 6 a.m., as the sky began to bleed orange behind the blinds, I heard the floorboards creak behind me. Melanie. Her face pale. Her voice flat. You found her, didn't you? I didn't answer. She nodded like she already knew. I think she's in my head, Melanie whispered. I think she's been in yours too. I felt a cold ripple down my spine. My throat was too dry to speak. I tried therapy, she continued. Journaling. Hypnotherapy. Nothing stuck. I kept losing time. Losing things. Like the boxes. Like hours. Whole days, sometimes. And I thought maybe it was grief. Maybe I was broken. But then I started seeing her in reflections. Glass. Water. Even once in my phone camera when it was off. Just standing behind me. She closed her eyes. And last night, at the party, she told me she was tired of hiding. I leaned against the counter, dizzy. She said you were next. We stared at each other in silence. Until my phone buzzed. I looked down. No number. Just a single new message. Check the guest book. My blood turned to ice. I didn't need to ask what guest book. I already knew. There was only one place in this house where we kept one. A hardcover book Melanie's aunt gave us at our wedding. An old tradition, she said. So you remember who was there when it all began. It had sat untouched on our bookshelf for years. I crossed the room and pulled it out. Thick dust. Ivory cover. Gold foil letters. I opened it to the front page. And there it was. Scrawled between my father's shaky cursive and Melanie's college roommate's bubbly looped signature. She watched. No name. No date. Just those 2 words. Written in red ink. I flipped the page. My hands were trembling. And on the next blank spread, something new had been added. Another message. More recent. Fresh ink. You forgot what really happened in room 314. But I didn't. And beneath it, a drawing. Simple. Childlike. Stick figures. One tall. One small. One lying down. One watching. And the smallest one had no face. I didn't want to open the door. I stood outside that hospital room for what felt like hours, the memory pressing in like a weight on my chest. But I wasn't actually there, not physically. The guest book still lay open on the table. Melanie was asleep upstairs, finally resting. And I was sitting on the living room floor, legs folded beneath me, staring at a photo of that hallway, of room 314, and letting my mind take me back. Really back. Not the foggy version I'd held onto for years. Not the safe, edited cut where time skipped over the worst parts. No, this time I saw it all. The smell of antiseptic. The fluorescent lights. The cold vinyl chair. The nurse's voice. My wife's tears. And Charlotte. Tiny, still, cradled in Melanie's arms as if she might wake up if we just wished hard enough. And then, the moment I had blocked out. Someone did come in. Not a doctor. Not a nurse. A woman. Blonde. Tall. Clipboard in hand. She introduced herself, but I didn't register her name. She said she was part of the hospital's grief support team. Asked if we wanted to talk. I said no. Melanie didn't answer. I just remember the way the woman looked at Charlotte. Not with sadness, but with recognition. Like she knew her. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Trauma does that. It lets things pass through you, unprocessed. I thought she was a figment of my exhausted mind. But she was real. And now I remembered her. Everything made sense in a way that only grief can explain. The woman, whoever she was, wasn't some ghost. Not a demon. Not a stalker or witch or curse. She was grief itself. Personified. Embodied. Made real by our silence. She grew in the cracks of the things we refused to say out loud. She haunted the empty boxes, the unsaid words, the nights we turned away from each other instead of holding on tighter. She stayed because we never let go. But now we had. The house was still. The sun rose through the windows, and for the first time in years, it felt warm instead of sterile. I stood up, walked into the nursery we had never finished, and opened the last drawer we hadn't touched in years. Inside was one thing. A photo. Faded, soft at the edges. Charlotte's sonogram. And on the back, in my own handwriting, written back, when hope still lived in our bones, were 3 words. We'll be okay. I took the photo upstairs. Melanie was half awake, curled beneath the blanket. I slid the photo into her hand. She looked at it, then at me, and her face broke. But it wasn't fear this time. It was relief. And something more. Peace. We cried that morning. Not the shattered kind, but the healing kind. We opened the windows. We let the light in. We even laughed. Small, broken, genuine. Later that week, we made a box. A new one. We filled it with letters. With her photo. With our memories. And we buried it beneath the maple tree in the backyard, together. No more hiding. No more silence. Charlotte existed. And so did our pain. But more importantly, so did our love. The kind that stays, even after everything else is gone. And when I looked across the yard at my wife, smiling through her tears, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. The haunting was over. And we were still here. Together.